What's going on, everybody, and welcome to the POWLAX podcast. We're going to go Joe Rogan style on this one. Our sponsors, technically sponsors for the day, are Pearl Lacrosse or Guardian Lacrosse. If you would like to receive 10% off of your Pearl Lacrosse order, you can get that by using the POWLAX code at pearllacrosse.com. They are the best balls in the game. They will never grease up, so you never have to worry. I'll be doing a new video here soon on the LT, which is actually a different type of, it's just a regular ball, but because it has texture, it is actually going to have more of a life than a regular flat ball that will grease up relatively quickly. Next up, we have the flip goalie. I really enjoy the flip goalie because I can, basically, if our goalies don't show up, I can put something in the net that will allow our players to shoot the pipes, and that really helps us out quite a bit because it basically just allows us to not just shoot on an empty net, which sometimes you do want to shoot on an empty net, but this really helps you. But so in the same way you would have used it for the Pearl lacrosse balls, you will use code POWLAX at flipgoalie.com. And I like to use these. We used them last night. We'll be using them in some of the examples that I show you today. Speaking of, I need to send some video to my computer because we'll be doing a little bit of video stuff today. So then, as always, if you have not checked out the POWLAX Patreon, please make sure that you guys do. So basically, all of the videos that are up on YouTube also have corresponding PDFs, which you can basically download for $5 per month. Technically, you can just get them for the $5. So one quick thing, I should cancel that because we're not having any data anymore. Joyful. Okay, so note to self, don't use up the Wi-Fi with your AirDrop if you are on a live stream. So I have not yet put up a wired connection to this computer yet from the new house because every time I do, it shuts down all the rest of the internet, which isn't a good thing. And so now I'm actually trying out the, I think, 2.4 network instead of the 5.0 network because it just works better because the wireless router's up there. But so I should fix that in the next couple of weeks, but there's just been so much to do with the new house. Let's see. So yeah, huge thank you to all the Patreon supporters. I know it's out of season. I know that a lot of people like to use it during the season, so I appreciate anyone who has supported in the past or now. Definitely appreciate it. If you want to check all of that out, you can do that at patreon.com/POWLAX. And as always, thank you for watching all of the videos. So if you have any questions during this live stream and want to use the YouTube to put them in, feel free to ask any questions. And we're going to get right into it. So the thing that I want to talk about today is the part-whole method, which, and I'll kind of define it in a second, but I really want to go over it in terms of the differences between how a high school or middle school player can conceptualize the game versus how we as coaches conceptualize the game. So I would say that I can, what's the word? I can get really X's and O's heavy. And when I'm doing that, whether that be to create a offense, what would you call it? If I'm trying to create a motion offense, I can see the whole motion in my head before I start giving players certain actions that they do. And so we're going to go over a skeleton shooting progression that we've been doing for this new offense. And the interesting thing that I find myself remembering a lot is how in high school when Coach Bowman was trying to teach us the triangle offense, the way he taught it did not hit my brain like it did 2 years after I was out of high school and in college. So like there's a level of understanding based on the interaction of two players that I think younger players have that is more advanced than any kind of three-man motion or complete motion as a whole. So when you think about building a motion offense, your objective is to build movements based on positions in relation to the ball as well as in relation to where they are on the field that players will begin to naturally do. That's why the 21-12 offense works so well because you are able to build the 3-man and 2-man motions within the context of your 3v0s, 3v2s, and 3v3s. Now, the struggle with some of the new stuff that I've been doing, which is very 2-man game heavy and very switch the field heavy, is that for a lot of players, they're not quite, what's the word? There's a lot of unnecessary movement based on just thinking that they need to move from their position without understanding why they're moving. So like, let's say you have a basic 2-man game. The most basic 2-man game is a dodge and a guy standing on the crease, right? If the dodge beats his man, the slide has to go or the dodge is going to score. If the slide goes, the player on the crease is wide open. You pass it to him, he scores, right? That's the easiest thing. But so the off-ball player doesn't need to necessarily be worried about where he needs to move. He needs to be worried about whether or not his defenseman goes. So there's this read capability that players are going to have. But so within the context of the offense that we're building now, I'll kind of give you so if you've seen the what would you call it? If you've seen the Penn State 1-4-1 wing picks offense, it has direct correlations to that, but it's a little bit different. But so I'll kind of give you a little show of exactly what that is. Let me switch over this to show you my screen. There you go. So I'm going to delete. Actually, I'll just pull the defensive. Let me get them back then. Let me pull the defensive players off the field, and I'll show you what I mean. So what we do is, let's say we have attackmen 1, 2, 3. Middies can come to the middle. We're kind of in a 1-4-1, which can come from an open set as well. And our objective is to find a wing pick here. So let's say this player has a shorty. We'll get the attackman inside, and then we can dodge with him and mirror with this player, right, with A3. So what I just described was basically on the right side, what I would call the 6 of the field, we are basically getting a dodge from the wing, a mirror from the crease, right? And so if the backside midfielder comes to the middle, so we've got a backside pair on the left side, 2, one in the middle, one on the outside, and then we have players at the 2 and the 8, which is top center, and the X. So as I continue to do all of these, I will not be using traditional language much longer, because I really think that the ability to use the phone diagram helps people quite a bit. And so it just makes things a lot faster for when I describe things. So if I say there's a player at the 5, they are on the crease. 1 is top left, 2 is top center, 3 is top right, 4 is side left, 5 is crease, 6 is side right, 7 is back left, 8 is X, and then 9 is back right. If you put a phone grid over a field, that's what it is. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, right? So what I notice as players are trying to get into these 2-man games are 2 things. First, there's an overemphasis on the idea of a pass down, pick down, right? So if we're in this open set here, and this player, and we say, you know, we want to go with the 6, which is the right side, this player will often pass down, and this player will move inside out to go set the pick, but they do it too quickly, right? Like the player ends up dodging well before the other player is in position to actively pick or be effective with a mirror, right? It just rushes it. So what we want to actually do is, as the ball swings around the field, we'd like this player to get into position, this player to get into position, and then as the ball moves from here to here, we are immediately into the picking scenario going through. Now, this is a high school level thing. It's not necessarily a middle school thing unless your players are relatively advanced. But just the idea of someone being off ball in a position where they can immediately set a pick prior to the pick being prior to the pass hitting the ball carrier is definitely something that keeps defensemen off guard. Because if you switch the field and there's an immediate pick, it's oftentimes the defense doesn't even have the option of being able to communicate the pick because it just happens so quickly, right? Like that's the main idea. Now, The places where we have been having trouble with this is not in the two-man game. And I'll show you the skeleton offense, two-man game, skeleton shooting things that we've been doing that really help this. And basically what it comes down to is this. So we'll get a line of players where M2 is. We'll get a line of players where M1 is. All the balls will be up here, and basically we're passing into a dodge. You can do whatever kind of, shake school / Two Wolves lacrosse footwork. Coach Tintle, shout out to you as well. I love all your videos. If you guys don't follow Shake School, Two Wolves lacrosse, and Coach Tintle on Instagram, definitely do. They give up all of their best information. Like, they have their back-end programming that they can give you, but like if you just watch what they do a lot, you'll see how the core foundations of actually preparing good footwork and body movement is incorporated into what they do. But so within the confines of the skeleton offense, we're just passing into a dodge. They can go underneath, got to get to the front of the goal, or they can go over the top to get to the goal. Now, as we build, once a player once we get the dodges that we want, then we have a player come inside to pick. So now the ball will be thrown here. He'll come out to set the pick. He'll hop either way to get to the place. And then we always make sure they roll to the goal, because if he wants to roll back over the top, we don't want a player to mirror in a position where they're going to be in the way of a dodge if this player can gain an advantage, right? They want to get to the middle of the field to clear space on the entire side for the dodger, even after the two-man game happens. Now, that's at least my thought process and theory on it. Now, I'm not too concerned with the that drill and how we're running our wing pairs now, because once players understand the idea of throwing into wing pairs, it happens really effectively no matter what, instead of having your pass down, pick down, where the defense has a lot of time to act and to play within that context, right? So now the thing where we have trouble is our backside players. Now I'm going to show you what Penn State does, and then I'm going to show you what we're trying to do. So what Penn State will do based on each player, the low side is easy. This player is going to start on the ball side, and as the dodge goes, especially if it comes underneath, he's going to fade to try and draw. And then if his defenseman, who I'll just add in here, goes to the ball, so as they start, you want to make sure he's on the ball side. If this player goes towards the ball, we'll throw it to a lead me through A2, and he will then curl this side. And so then off-ball players, so what should happen is this player should fade too, and he should have a nice lane to him as well. I keep grabbing the wrong thing. So that's one. Easy fade. Now, for the top player, M2, let's get back to where we were. If M1 decides to go over the top from the 6th position, and M2, who is in the 2 spot, fades, now same thing. If this player slides, we should have a pass to an immediate alley dodge from the 1 to the 4, right? So you're coming down the alley hard. Now, the backside movement is essentially an exchange and separate. So you have A1 and M3, who are your backside pair, who are in kind of the 4-5 area, and you have a cutter, and he can go top side or to the back pipe, and this player will basically choose to go to the pipe or kind of float in this area here. Now, if he floats here, the cut has to go to the back pipe. If he cuts down, now the other player, the outside player, has to cut across the middle, and that's kind of the idea of what we're trying to do there, because as players are exchanging, you are confusing defensemen, and then you are trying to have them separate so that a player who is reading as he's coming off this pick, if we draw a slide from one of them, let's put both of their defensemen in really quick. So it would be DM2 on M3 and at D1 here. So what you would have is, we'll put D2 down here again just to get it even. So let's say our two-man game. So first we've got our crease slide. So if this becomes a pick, we're sliding as if it were a dodge, right? And then we have our 2 who would be here. But so if we gain this advantage and we slide from the crease, our objective is to just make sure that D1 can't cover both of these players. So if I just cut off of this player, if D1 stays in line the whole way, he might be able to be in the lane of both players the entire time. So we want to separate, which will make it so that as he comes off, he should be able to find one or both of the players, right? And so this makes, now the drawing looks really befuddled, but that's kind of the idea. Now, the issue that we have all of the time is the understanding of what players are going to be doing and why they need to either vacate the backside or what they need to be doing from the fade positions. Okay, so we're in our 1-4-1. This could be an open set. It doesn't really matter. Like if we wanted to run an open set, it would be the same kind of idea. If we did want to do kind of a pass down, pick down thing. But so what happens is when the players are in either this spot, the 2 spot or the 8 spot, and they are fading because of a wing dodge, they don't conceptualize the idea of watching their player slide and then being in a position to catch the ball and dodge a recovering player. So there's a distance that's required. So ideally, you'd like to be in a spot on a fade from the top, right? If M1 comes over the top from the 6 towards the 2, and the player in the 2 fades kind of to the 1, if he can just throw the ball to the 1 and then we have a step down here, that's nice. But the odds of that happening are not very good because with the players cutting here, oftentimes you have a defenseman in here who's going to come up to him very quickly if he's too close to the goal, right? The rotation just then, they'll mix and match the rotation in order to make sure that they get on hands relatively quickly. At least at our level, that's what they do. And so in order to combat this, you have to prepare these players to catch the ball and be ready to dodge. And that's the important thing for these players. But the hard part is if they don't have a conceptualization of the entire idea of this motion offense, they won't understand exactly kind of what to do and how to do it. So the way that I have been trying to teach it and the way that has worked relatively well is by using this skeleton shooting thing, which we'll go over in just a second. The other aspect that is tough for players to understand is the back and forth nature of your wing picks idea, at least the way my wing picks idea works. And mine is probably wrong, not wrong. Mine is harder. The way I think about it is harder because instead of having this wing pair here, so instead of having the players of the 2 and the 8, the top center and X player, actively in their own pair, they operate individually within the Penn State offense, right? The player at X is going to try to fade, get behind the defender's head. As the dodge comes to X, he's trying to gain separation because the slide may go to the ball carrier. And then once he has his advantage, he's coming up the hash hard, right? Now, in order for this to work correctly, the players who are cutting on the backside have to reorient themselves to the new player who has the ball and then be open for a cut. Because if the defenseman slides off of them as the 2, now if they're not available right away, the player who is coming up the hash has to either be ready to dodge and beat a recovering defenseman or has to immediately throw that second pass. That's at least the idea. Now, because he's operating independently, the way the offense functions is that these players can actually kind of stay outside a little bit more because if he's dodging up the hash, they'll have a secondary motion. Now, what I like to do and what we've been trying to do for a while and what we were trying to do all spring was we want to cut these 2 through in order to make this pass to the fade at X into a 2-pass option where because both players cut through, they should take both of their defensemen. And now if we draw, we'll only have the player defending the fade up top in this position. And so now because they cut through, this player catches it coming up the hash. There's only one player who can cut because everyone else took cutters originally. And now the ball is passed up to M2. And now we have some type of a step down, right? That's the idea at least. Now, this is much more difficult for the players who cut through originally, because now what we end up having is these two players will pull together on the side. The players who were in the original pick are going to get to X and up top, and the players who cut through originally are going to find their spots on the opposite side. That's the idea. And the reason that I like the idea is because it selects your three groups. You have a wing pick / fade group here. That's top center and X at the 2 and the 8. And then you have a wing pick / fade group that's on the left side. Now, the tough part of it is players' ability to read their defensemen, make themselves aware, and make the dodger aware of if they become open. So you have all these communication tactics that you got to use within your skeleton offensive series. But because players, like, the tough part about it is that with high school and with middle school players, until they have an actual understanding of the spacing and how one movement creates spacing for another, this is a very, very difficult thing to run. Like, if I just change this up really quick, let's go to a 21-12 style of offense that's way more easy to understand. Here is what we basically get, right? So this would be the 21-12 set, right? Your traditional 2-3-1, and now you are dodging the alleys or over the top. And now if we dodge the alley, we go dodge, follow, float. Or if you want to use a two-man game, you can dodge, mirror, fade. And then we have to cut through, fill, pass, pass. Now we have the inverse of what we just did. And now we're dodging, fade, or that'd be float, and then follow from X. And then say clear through, pop, right? Or fill. And so that idea is very easy because players can understand the three-man motions and it becomes relatively easy. But the idea of fading or drifting is something that's a lot more difficult for players to understand. It's also tough. So let's take I know I'm jumping all over the place, but the whole idea that I'm trying to convey, just to wrap this part of it up, is the value in taking your time to allow players to understand all of the ideas behind what it is you're doing can definitely help if the players are at that level. Now, this is not something I would run with 5th, 6th graders, even probably 8th graders. I would run the two-man game, and I would run the players cutting backside, but I wouldn't have the opposite too. So we'll just draw it again. So let's say we have our 1-4-1, or even our open. So I got to stop double clicking that. So we have our two-man game here. That's pretty easy for them to understand. They definitely get the idea. But now this player would not have to get to the other side. He would basically be in a position where if he wants to cut, he can, but he has to get back. And he can fade if he wants, but then he has to get back eventually, right? But so if he finds a cut that he likes, he's just going to cut through, and then when he gets time to kind of come back out and get up top, he'll get back up top. Now, these players who are trying to cut, they're basically just going to exchange. We have the same idea where we're trying to draw from the drift here, but now as he's coming up field, these players will be in their way because they don't have to actually cut through. But so it's a much easier way for them to understand the dynamic of, we've got a two-man game here, we've got a two-man game here. These two players are basically free, and if they find an advantage, they can have the advantage. It's much easier for them to understand that. The other way you can think about it is like this, through an open set, is basically we have a two-man game with these two-man game with these two are free. Simple. And the key is that they establish who is there each time they're down, and so they understand what their role is going to be within this offensive set. Then your objective is to understand exactly who we want to attack, right? So the odds of M1 dodging are significant if he can beat a pole, because M1 clarifies the best midfielder, which then is most likely going to get an LSM, right? And then other than that, you basically so M2 and M3 have to be ready to dodge in most sets because they're going to draw the short stick, right? That's the whole idea. Now, in order for us to get these players to understand exactly what their jobs are going to be, the toughest part is making sure they haven't. So one of the whole purposes of all of the videos that I create is the fact that now when I want to run a 10-man ride, I can tell people, sorry about that. We're going to decline that. I don't even know who's got a 202. That was a weird number. If we want them to run a 10-man ride, I'll just give them the 10-man ride video. You have to watch it. Then we quiz them. And if they don't know what they're doing, or someone shows that they did not take the time to watch the video, maybe we run, maybe that person just is off the field because he doesn't know what's going on. And it just allows players to have a conceptualization of what we're doing prior to getting to practice, which allows us to implement further. But now for club, oftentimes the investment's just not quite there as it is with high school. And you have this, you want to go over kind of the ideas, but if you don't have that full conceptualization, the other drills you have are meaningless, right? So now we're going to go through our skeleton, the progression of our skeleton, what do you call it? Skeleton shooting. And so skeleton shooting is essentially putting your players in a skeleton position where they can run through the actions and the decisions that they're going to have to make in every single facet possible, just to allow them to continuously build. Now, sometimes I will not give a dodger a decision that they have the ability to make, and sometimes I will, right? Sometimes everyone has to go high side, or so everyone has to go low side, or everyone has to sweep or go down the alley, whatever it is for your offense. And other times they'll be able to choose because it will allow everyone else to read and react, and you have to kind of do both through time. So the first thing that we do is, and I use cones on the edges, but so we'll basically have cones for these lines over here, and we'll have a line of players up top. The players up top are going to have the balls. So the first thing that people screw up, the first thing that my players screw up all the time, and it's not that they screw it up, it's that they think that they're trying to do something that's not. They're getting too into the two-man game when they really need to be in the one-man game. They need to be in the mode of, if I can beat my man, I'm going to beat my man. That's what their job is, right? And so you can have two lines up top if you want, but the first thing we do is we pass to the wing so that we're getting used to the idea of having a two-man game that's starting as they receive the ball. And then as they dodge, they're just trying to turn the corner, right? They're trying to turn the corner, they're trying to score. This player doesn't do anything. He just comes and he gets in line with whichever one he went. This player will shoot, and then he'll go up top, and then the next side will go. You'll pass down, and then this player will just dodge. Okay, then so our next part of our progression in this offense, because of how our players were playing it, was the difference between, so what they're doing is we allow our players to mirror if they don't want to go pick, right? So basically they're trying to set up their defenseman inside, and they're able to mirror. But what that ends up doing when you have picks is they feel like they're able to just sit on the outside. And you can in certain places, but if you cut through, you're more dangerous the majority of the time, right? So what we do is we have this player dodge, and then once he tries to get in here, we're going to assume that he did not, that the defenseman is with him. They're going to roll back up the hash, and they're going to shoot up the hash, right? So that's your second shot. Then if they come to the top, they have to get between the pipes, and then they're going to roll back. And this is one thing that I love about any of these offenses is players' abilities to attack the middle of the field from top center, because as the player up top is going to fade, they're going to fade out of that way. That's a strict Duke's fade and follow style of offense. I love how it plays, and these players have to understand, if I'm going to the middle of the field and I get to the middle, I'm in a prime position to roll back, and I want to use that, and I want to be able to get to the field or get to the goal. And so we'll have them just do their rollbacks on their dodges, right? So that's the second set. I'm going to do something real quick. If I can do this, I'm just going to, I doubt I'll be able to do this, but I think if if my photos have updated, there's a potential that I actually already have the videos on my computer, and I actually do, which is pretty nuts. All right, let me find the right one, and then I'll show you kind of what we're doing. Hopefully the audio won't play. Let's see, that should help that. All right, sorry for the delay here. Okay, it's not, it's going to have to download, which probably means that my stream has just started to go to crap. No, it hasn't, which is good. But so that's going to download. It's not actually fully up there, so we're just going to animate it. So here we go. Back to here. So the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to have cones on the inside of both sides as well. So I'm going to just duplicate all these people. And we're going to put another one up here. Boom. 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 So, yeah, let's just make sure that we're not the exact same. All right, so these are 2 lines up top. Sorry, it doesn't look very good, but... So, and if you're listening to the POWLAX podcast, which hasn't been updated in forever because of just all the hecticness of, moving and all of that, and you'd like to actually see what I'm talking about on the YouTube link, like I'm diagramming all of these, so when I'm talking and you don't understand exactly what I'm saying, it's because I'm diagramming and it should make sense. But so from here, what we do, the first thing that we do, and the first thing that most teams do, is very different here. The first thing that we do here is as we pass into our pick, right, this player is going to come out, and then now as he chooses his direction, he's going to roll to the goal, and now we're rolling back into the space that he left. And that's super important. Super, super, super important, because it lets the player who is picking and rolling know that they need to get out of the way. Let me just make sure I can find my... There we go. I had to find my cursor. Okay. So then once the player shoots the ball, the player who shot will come inside. The player who threw the ball will come out to whichever line, and then they'll go again. But so that allows players to understand when they pick, they need to roll to the goal, and as they roll to the goal, basically they're not always looking. So we reestablish the idea of dodging to score rather than just you have to look for the slipping player. Now, within the context of this, we may say that the player who has the ball has to throw a fake back to the slipping player to make sure that they are constantly looking up and have the ability to find that player. But we're not making it to where we always are just finding the slip, because players get so caught up in the idea of they have to feed the player cutting to the goal, when really that's not the best option for what we want to do, right? Like, the main struggle I see with players in a 2-man game is that they don't actually dodge to the goal. So now the next thing we will do is, and this one was just kind of a thought process. It wasn't really something that I think I'll establish as a part of the skeleton offense within the scheme. But what we'll do is we will run both sides at the exact same time. So we'll throw down, we'll throw down to both sides at the same time. Both sides will run their picks. And now, And now, as this player comes off, this player will roll, this player will come off, this player will roll, and they'll have to communicate and feed the opposite side. And then they'll try and shoot, and then they'll score, right? But so it gets these players in the idea of, I'm rolling to the goal, and I might not expect the ball from the player who came off the pick. I might expect the ball from another player, right? But so we build through all of these ideas on the wings. Then we'll go through, pass to the pick, hit the player who's rolling, right? Or pass to the pick. Now we're going to, we're just going to mirror. And so as this player dodges down, he's got to get to here. He's got to roll back. This player will mirror to the top, will throw up, and he will catch it and he'll have a step down, right? We'll do all these different types of things because they're different possibilities within the concepts of the offense that work within the two-man game. And this is why the two-man game works so well when we do it, because our players have so many reps at just repping the motions that they'll need to take, and it does work really well. Where we get caught up is with the other players, and so we will do different things with these other players. So the first thing we will do is we will get rid of the players in the middle again. Balls will go up top. We'll have players on the wings. Let's get 2 more players down to the wings on both sides. And now we are going to throw to a fade. So the thing that our guys messed up yesterday was they wanted to throw to a fade from the opposite sides, but really you want to bait the adjacent slide. So the way you do that, it's the same at X. You want to be ball side first and then fade. So as we pass to this player on the wing and he dodges over the top, we would mandate over the top here, and this player fades. Now we are in a position where now he's going to move the ball forward, and now this player is free to dodge or shoot in whichever way he wants. So if he's a righty here, he would wind up maybe face dodge and take a jump shot on the run. Maybe he would catch it righty and then just crank it. Maybe he would, now if he's a lefty, his stick would be in front of him like this, and he would say, lead me, so that the ball would be passed to in front of him, and now he is into a dodging motion against a recovering player, dodge, and then he's shooting, coming through that way. But the thing that gets players mixed up here, I guess the reason we're doing it is because in a game, players don't see the idea of baiting their player to slide and then being in a position to catch the ball and dodge against a recovering player in this spot, right? Then also sometimes because the players don't cut through, there's players in the way. But once you draw that initial slide, everyone has to understand, okay, now they're rotating, now they're recovering, and now we want to, try to score, or we want to push the 2-on-1s and try and score in less time than they have the ability to recover to. But so the struggle here that I have had, and it's not really a struggle, it's more so just a continuous learning process because of being rusty and coaching as well, is that without players conceptualizing the entire idea of the offense, they're not doing it in a way where they're now like, so once we say, you're going to pass to the wing, you're going to dodge, this guy's going to fade, and you're going to pass to the fade, and he's going to shoot. Once you say that, the dodger stops dodging hard, and it drives me nuts because it's like the reason we dodge hard first to score is to get them in the act of doing it. Now, that's probably just on me as far as making sure I continue to harp on them to make sure that they are pushing to the middle of the field and that they are then going to, pass to shoot and to, they're going to dodge to score and then have to move the ball because that's what's going to happen. But so basically, as we ran this yesterday, once we got to the actual 6-on-6 portion, they did a lot better, but there were still some little parts where I understood that I needed to I needed to go over the whole idea of the offense prior to any of the other stuff. Now, where we score most of our goals is off of dodges within our two-man game, because as players are running that, a lot of times players get open because the defense is too slow, and we're doing a pretty good job of passing into the pick and doing all of that. And so it's definitely been a beneficial thing. But if we can make it so that our fades and our cuts establish themselves as well, we're going to be even more dangerous. So the next part of this that we end up doing is we basically just do a pass, a dodge. So a pass down to the wing, we'll get players at X, and now we will fade to a pass, and then this player will come up the hash and they'll shoot there. And that's basically just the whole idea of trying to play hang-up games with the defenseman and making sure that the player here who is dodging and who is throwing this forward doesn't throw it in front of the goal, and that they are working on the ability to basically to throw this pass without having it picked off, because that's kind of the toughest. That's one of the tough parts about that part of the toughest parts of that I guess, thing. But so, and this should say skeleton shooting. I'm wondering why. Well, as people come into the live stream, they're like, what? That doesn't, like, why are there like 12 people on the field? Okay, so we've got another, I'd say, 20 minutes, and now we're going to talk man down. So, if you've been following the POWLAX podcast and the live streams and whatnot, you know that, or if you follow the Twitter, I did a poll that asked whether or not, actually, before we get into that, I'm going to get some hydration in. I've been recently working out and lifting, and it's been great, except for the fact that anytime I lift, my shoulder pops out and it rotates out of place. It's awful. And it happened yesterday, just kind of like reaching back like this. It was not fun at all. But so we're going to go over the man down in just a second, and I got to stop talking to do that. My new favorite drink is a emergency in about 10 ounces of water, and then you add in a LaCroix so it becomes a very tasty carbonated beverage. It's very good. It's very good for you too, I guess, because emergencies are good for you, or that's what they tell me. So let's get into some man down defense. So within our man down defensive sets, there are, so if you've been following the Twitter, you'll know that, which I don't care if you follow the Twitter or not. I post the same things each day on all of the sites. But so on Twitter, though, you have the ability to do a poll. And as you do the poll, I asked whether people wanted me to do a video of a Virginia's house zone or Duke's 5-man rotation, where as the players then carry, they zone. So as the man-up offense carries from one zone to the other, they'll then be in a zone. But so it's a modification on two separate man-down defenses. And the immediate, yes, this is what I want to see, was the Duke 5-man rotation to a zone. But so then I thought to myself, well, how good were Virginia or Duke at man-down defense? And neither one was in the top 10. And so I was like, well, I want to do one that's the best. The best man-down defense last year was Providence College, and I don't have any film on them. But I do have film on the third, which is Richmond. Now, for Richmond, they do something very cool. They do what is basically they'll zone to begin in either a box and one or something, and then they're going to manipulate and switch who they lock off through time based on either positions of the field or their scout of whatever player they think would mess up what that is. And so that was another one that I want to do. And so after all of this deliberation on because like in the same way that the players have to have this part whole understanding of exactly what they're doing, I need to have a part whole understanding of how I'm going to actually articulate all of this within a video, within a PDF. And if I don't take the time to like really formulate exactly what I'm going to do, I begin to work for nothing, because the pieces that I'm building have to be essentially redone so many times until I actually have like a full foundation of what I want to do. So instead of building a bunch of stuff that I didn't need, I decided I'm just going to do all of it again. So if you've seen on the POWLAX YouTube, I have videos on the 4-man rotation and the 5-man rotation. And now I'm going to be building a video on man-down defense in its entirety. And the reason is because in order to make the Duke 5-man rotation to zone video, I have to outline all the principles of how to do a 5-man rotation or any kind of man-to-man, man-down defense anyway. So why not just build them and then go through everything? I feel like, like Jordan Peterson would say, do it as benefit, or do it as, what's the rule? It's do it as important, not what is expedient, right? And so by doing all of man down defense, I think it'll allow me to cut it up and do it in all these different ways, but that's what I'm going to do. Either way. Here's the trouble with man down defense. You're at a distinct disadvantage right off the bat, right? Man down defense is like hitting in the MLB. Well, no, man up offense is like hitting in the MLB. The majority of teams are at about 33%. And it's interesting that it's not higher because, well, I mean, it's all about playmaking and how you set up everything. But the fact that it's about a 66% success rate for the average team, and you can get all the way up to like 80% success rate, I feel like the focus on man up versus man down is, I don't think it's overly done, but in the same sense, it can actually, I mean, 1 or 2 goals can be the difference in a lot. So either way. So let's go over some man down defense. So the reason I want to go over this in this live stream is to see whether you think, well, if there are any things that I'm technically going to be missing, or that you're like, okay, well, you didn't explain that in a way that allows it to be easily understood. But so let's say you have a man-to-man defense, and we're actually going to go to this open set. Well, actually, I don't want to screw up these images, but we'll just copy and paste it. Cool. So the way to think of a 5-man rotation in this set is the idea that all 5 players are going to have to rotate to the 6 players, right? And so an open set is easiest because it allows you to conceptualize the ideas, whereas a 3-3 or a 2-3-1 or a 1-4-1 can muddle the ideas that are within it. So first, you have a player on ball. You've got your right. You've got your left. These players are responsible for the players to the left in a man-to-man scenario, which means if they cut through or they do anything, you have to stay with them. And then they're also responsible for the skip lanes. And that'll become very apparent when we get to the 4-man rotation as well. Now, the players who are backside are 2 covering 3, right? And so this player is responsible for A3, and then he's responsible for A1, and they're both responsible for half of A2. In any event where the ball is skipped through, these players are going to have to communicate who has ball, and then when they do, everyone else will need to rotate to find the correct place. Now, just your basic idea, you're going to rotate. Now, in the event that these players go to a 2-3-1, or let's say the 3-3, the 3-3 works in the same way as the open set does in terms of you've got ball, you've got left, you've got 2, you've got 2, you've got left, or you got right? And now just because this player is inside doesn't make anything different. So you've got ball moves and everybody moves. But so as they get into a 3-3, you end up looking a lot like a house zone, except for the fact that this player doesn't have to go all the way in to cover the crease because you end up having this player backside come in to cover the crease, right? But so they look like they're in a house zone because this player will go from A3 to A2. This player will go from A2 to A1. The LSM will go from A1 to M1. D1 will go from, I think he'll basically just play M2 and then kind of get inside. And then DM1, as the ball comes over, will go from M3 to A3, right? But so it looks sometimes a lot like a house zone, but it's not. And the way you know that it's not is because when you end up having any kind of motion, players will either fall through or you'll be able to see the fact that they're man-oriented, not zone-oriented, if they're in the 3-3. Now, if I change this up and we go into a 2-3-1, now we really look like an inverted house zone, where now we basically, as the ball swings, we have this kind of spoke pattern where the backside player has to get in, or the backside players have to get in. Our right and lefts are in the same basic formation that they would be. And now, if you've seen Lars Tiffany's stuff when he was at Brown, he goes over this pretty well. He basically has balls, 1s and 2s, and it's I term it ball, left, right, and then 2s. Right, but so that's the main idea behind the offense. Now, if you get into a 1-4-1, the 5-man loses its beneficial nature because you don't have 5 perimeter players, and if you're going to try to communicate through rotating inside with only 4 perimeter players, you're going to have a bad time. That's why we'd probably go to a 4-man rotation where these 4 players would have to get backside to cover the back of the 2 players inside. So where this becomes an issue is when teams start to leave and enter the crease. That's another rule you have to have with man-to-man, man-down defenses is as you're swinging the ball, right? If they're just swinging, D3's backside now, right? As the ball moves up to the 2, LSM is backside now. D3 and D1 are left. And now D2 is basically inside trying to play whoever's ball side, and the backside player has to come in and split 2 on the backside, and that's your 4-man rotation. But they don't actually have to rotate because you don't have more points on the perimeter than you do on the inside. Now the problem with this is that inside, if you only have one player who's defending inside, you're going to have all kinds of picks and motions inside that are super easy. Like the 22 quick play is something that you'll easily be able to utilize in this set. But so next, and the reason I would outline the 4-man rotation and the 5-man rotation first is because you have to have an understanding of the rotations in order to build your zone, because your zone at some point is going to have to rotate. So now we're going to go back into let's go to a 2-3-1. If we're going to be in a 4-man rotation, that means the player on the crease is going to lock. It will most likely be the short stick, but not always. Now, in this position, within a 4-man rotation, we always want to have pressure on the ball. We want a player. We're not in a zone trying to keep shape, so we want to have a player on hands of the ball. Now, as the ball moves, we are going to rotate the 4 to cover 5 in this manner. Pretty self-explanatory. We're basically a box covering a pentagon, but we are automatically rotating. And that's the part that some players just, they because they're in club and club runs a box and 1, and now they're on, and now coach says, hey, run a 4-man rotation. They'll hold the box thinking that the rotation comes after, because that's how zone defense works, when they need to just fully rotate. Because in the event that, let's say D3 is here and the ball moves, so right now we've got ball, left, right, 2. I'd say 1 or just crease. He's really not in the rotation, so he doesn't necessarily really matter. But so as the ball moves here, now we've got a ball, right, left, 2. In the event that as this ball is thrown, D3 thinks he can get back and cover, now all 3 of these other players have to reorient where they are based on the expectation of what they should have done. Now, if it was a zone and the principals would have been in a zone, it would have been they wouldn't have had to reorganize how they thought, because the zone rotating depends on the rotation call, which is easier to understand. Now, so that's your basics of your man-to-man, man-down defenses, whether you're a 5-man rotation or a 4-man rotation. Now, if we are going to build a box and 1, let's just change this. Now we are trying to maintain a shape. The reason we are maintaining our shape, and so when I say shape, I do not mean that this player has to cover this circle, which is actually something that I need to make sure I put a note on somewhere for. Oh, wow. I must be using a different whole set. I can mess up any of these I want because I think I have them all in other places. So I was looking for a specific image. Whoa, what did that do? That was weird. Is it here? Yep, it's here. Okay, perfect. Cool. So here's your box and 1, the idea of a box and 1, right? Now, because all of these players, I'll use this one, it looks like they're trying to cover all of their zones, right? But really what you want is you would like, let's make that go back to the way it was. Sorry, I'm jumping around a bit. When you say shape, what you really mean is that this shape of this box and 1 will navigate and move together. if someone has to play the ball, they will all move together. And so they're maintaining the shape and the distances between each other. Because if the ball is over with A1, everyone's in good position here. Now, if the ball gets swung to A3, if they can maintain their shape, we are going to cover up all the easy decisions near where they are. Now, the trouble here is, and the trouble with box and ones and the way you want to attack a box and one, is you want to get the players off of the pipes. That's at least the easiest way I have found. And you want to make sure if you're in a box and one, you want to make sure you stay on the pipes, because the pipes are the most dangerous spot. If you get pulled out, if this player gets pulled out to the wing, there's no way for other people to get to this player who's coming underneath easily, right? So let's just get this all back to where it was. Okay. Now, the key to our back end of our box and one, and these are things that these are images I ended up making for the Hawks playbook. But if you're in a box and one and one player has to play two, that's what you're basically trying to do. You're trying to play it to where you're not actually playing the ball. You're playing a space, but if someone comes into your space. So let me rephrase that. On the offensive side, what we want to try to do is we want to try to attack gaps. So here, if I am on this wing with M1, so let me get rid of the passing lines real quick. Okay. Oh, I got rid of M3. We'll just make another one. Oh. I have no idea what symbol that is or how I made it. That was interesting. M1. Okay, so if I have the ball and I'm M1 and I'm coming in, I want to step into this gap to draw the LSM over. And then I want this player to step into the backside of LSM's gap so that then as I move it here, they are forced to rotate or give up this good shot. Now, in the event a rotation happens, this player needs to rotate to this player's zone, and now we fill, which is essentially your four-man rotation. But once you're back into your shape, you then gel again, and that's kind of why I think you would want to you would want to organize and make it so that you would teach the four-man rotation first, because you have to teach it's an aspect of your zone, right? Then you have zones like a box and string where you're coming up and down the middle with this player. So let me go like this. That's the wrong. I keep hitting the option button instead of the command button. Here we go. So basically, as the ball swings, this player will stay in their zone. These players will crash to the middle as it gets up top, and DM1 will go up to the top, and then he will also cover the crease. Now, this being a box and string is different from a, from a house zone, because these top two shooting players don't have to get into the middle as far each time. Right? Because if we're in a house zone and the ball is at A3, D1 has to be in on the crease because DM1 is going to be in this skip lane because he doesn't have to get back to the crease player. Now, if we're in a box and string, now because this player is in a string position where he has to cover the crease when the ball's down here, this player can now be a little bit higher. He doesn't have to get in quite as far. But if we're in a house, now DM1's zone area is up here, and we have to make sure the backside player is getting in a little bit farther. He should actually be inside a little farther anyway, but either way, they look very similar, but the rules are just a tiny bit different. But so, let's say we have our house zone, and now the same basic thing happens, right? So, in a house zone, against a house zone, we are going to want, what I would do is I would have the ball get up top, and now as these three are playing up top, we are now trying to skip to the low corners. But another thing you can do is just try and draw, or use your rotations or motions to try and draw the low players off of their pipes. But in any event where, let's say, this player comes out to X and you are now in an open set, if the player at X pushes aside and now the LSM has to play them and now you're moving the ball up, now you find yourself in this kind of a rotation where now DM1 has to play M1, D3 has to play M2, and you're in that, you are then rotating back into your zone set. So you have to build the idea of a rotation prior to understanding the idea of a zone that's going to rotate. But now, here's the whole problem, and this will be the last thing because we are at an hour and I have to make sure I'm upstairs by 10:30. So one of the biggest things I've noticed with high school players who play at a lot of different places is they don't actually listen when the coaches are naming specific things, right? So we had a player who was an unbelievable player, extremely athletic, very, very good player, but didn't understand the actual formations and things. They didn't understand the difference between a box and one and a 4-man rotation and a 5-man rotation. They didn't understand how those little things use all of the same techniques in order to build the new, like each different offense. So when we were moving into and out of specific man down defenses based on what teams gave us, there wasn't that understanding. So hopefully, and what I would ask you if you watch this video, if you want to comment on it, is I'd like to understand if that progression makes sense. Now, I have to build in the individual ways to play within each part. Like in a man-to-man, man-down defense, you have to understand the idea that we're always rotating. In a zone, you have to understand your zone as well as the shape of the entire defense together, and that will dictate some parts of the way that you want to play, how you want to position yourself when you're off ball, things of that nature. And I have to build all of those things in both, but in the entirety and the whole aspect of the whole conceptualization of man down defense, does it make sense when I say you have to build the rotation first so that your zone has a backfill? So as I go to build this man down defense video, that's the progression I've landed on, right? Is to build the man-to-man so that then the zone has the backside understanding of all of that once it's there. But so that's the idea. That's what we're going to try to do. I hope you guys enjoyed the presentation / podcast. If you're on the podcast once again and you were kind of like, what is he talking about? The live stream that we did today is up and it has video, and basically I'm sharing the screen of kind of what exactly I'm talking about. So yeah, I'm getting another call in. We're going to decline that real quick and just end this up. But so once again, thank you guys all for watching. I hope that you guys enjoyed it. Let me know what you guys thought. And once again, if you need new balls, I just got 3 new buckets of balls that should be here in the next day or two. A white, a yellow, and a white, a yellow, and an orange, which I will share exactly why I got 3 of 3 different colors. Probably here next week, because I'll want to talk about why I did it and what exactly we did with it. But so you can use code POWLAX to get pro balls there. Also, you can do that at flipgoalie.com if you need something to, basically if you want a goalie when you don't have one. And then thank you again for all of the patrons and supporters on Patreon. I hope you guys enjoy it. If you want to get some POWLAX swag, also, you can go to the POWLAX store. I think it'll be in the description. Have a good one. Hope you guys have all been well. I'm not sure if I'll be back I will not be back next Wednesday. We are running a camp, so there will be no live stream next Wednesday. And then I think I pushed the European Lacrosse Coaches Group discussion too. But so hope you guys have a great week.